Hello everyone, this is me Melissa. I'm back in the ranting shop. I know it's been a while. I typically do Love is Blind and I also do Never Ever Met, but I just wasn't feeling either one of these seasons and so I did not review them. However, I may do that, as a whole cohesive type of analysis. I might do it, but it depends on my mood, so we shall see. But today I came into the ranting shop with news that Lydia and Milton from Love is Blind, I forgot the season, but I'm pretty sure everybody remembers Lydia because there was a drama that occurred with her and Uche, because her and Uche had previously dated, and then people felt like she was manipulative and she came on the show on purpose just so she could stalk Uche, and Uche had this whole victim thing that he concocted, this stalker girl persona that he gave to Lydia, and everybody jumped on that. People already thought she was a little bit loony, but him adding that to it made people even more justified in feeling how they felt about her. Now, when people saw the union of Milton and Lydia, of course everybody was skeptical. We know how the families reacted, particularly the sister. Everybody was really asking him, is that what you really want? Are you really ready? Turns out that his family members had very good reason to question his intention, because it turns out that although he came across nerdy and this nice guy who's gonna protect Lydia and he's gonna be this knight in shining armor kind of persona, or this person that wouldn't hurt a fly, apparently that is not the real Milton. So I have it's not quick, but I have a few things that Lydia decided to come on the what's something podcast with Ashley, with AD, and she decided to spill tea about her experience in that relationship. And before I even get into this, my thing about TV relationships is that the success rate is extremely low, because these people 9 times out of 10 are not going on these platforms with great intentions. Anybody who's looking for love in quotation marks on TV, I don't think they're necessarily going in thinking, I've tried everything. They say that, but that's never really the case. It's often they want to create a social media presence, they want to become influencers, they want to, live that type of lifestyle. I feel like Milton went on there to prove a point to someone, maybe his friends, but I don't think he was ready for marriage. Neither did his family. And unfortunately, it's something that Lydia later found out. Now, everybody would speak about the age disparity, and everybody felt like he was very boyish and childish and wasn't ready for marriage. And it turns out that Lydia, after 3 years of being married to him, she's agreed. Okay, she's agreed that he wasn't ready for marriage. Okay, so let's get into everything that they spoke about on the podcast. So first of all, when she brought up so we're starting from the ending. I believe that Lydia filed for divorce around March this year. So this is extremely recent. And when she brought it up to him, he said that he wanted her to sign an NDA. And Lydia said this is what prompted her decision to go on AD's platform to tell her truth. And the reason why she felt the need to speak about it now is because she said she'd been holding it in for so long. And I don't know if people know the feeling of hiding something that's been hurting you for so long and you can't say anything because there's the pressure of wanting to come across as this perfect couple. There's the pressure of wanting this relationship to succeed because so many people wanted that relationship to fail, or so many people were skeptical of that relationship. I completely understand it. I began watching reality TV from a young age, so I understand particularly The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. So I understand this pressure to for the couples to keep being together and keep up this happy face, because everybody is so fiercely either wanting it to end or rooting for it so hard that they put so much pressure on this couple by saying things like, oh, if they don't survive, I don't know what will happen. I don't know if I'll ever find love. Like, they put so much pressure on these poor people that they end up staying together to prove a point. They definitely do. And I think she and Milton stayed together to prove a point. And I know that the podcast bros always come and talk about women being the ones who always file for divorce as if it's such a negative thing. These men, it's been proven that they're very comfortable being in situations that are uncomfortable. They are comfortable in being uncomfortable in their relationship, and they will stay in it for as long as they live. But the woman, she's the one that ends up being fed up of being uncomfortable and unsafe in a relationship, and she leaves. You know, a lot of people make it seem like it's so horrible that it's the woman that files, when in actuality, I mean, how many people want to literally live in a cesspool of manure for the rest of their life just because they can tell people, oh, we're married? You know, it's a pride thing. That's why men don't file. It's a pride thing for them. Anyway, so I digress. Let's get back into the actual interview. So she said things were going downhill shortly after their marriage. So it really didn't take long for Milton to start showing his true colors. The first argument was about a woman that he dated but never cut off. Now, the issue with getting on these reality shows is that there's never a dating period. You don't get to see who that person really is. It's either you trust that what they're showing you is who they are and you jump into the marriage, or you decide to date each other. And we all know that the way this show is set up, nobody wants to be seen as a failure. A failure is anybody that doesn't get married at the end. The audience does not respond well to couples that break up or couples that decide that they want to date longer. They feel as if they should know, or why did they come on the show? But realistically speaking, when we get out of the days and the fantasy of these shows, we realize that it's actually more reasonable for people to date longer in real life and then marry, as opposed to rush and marry a stranger just for views, or just to make it seem as if that show was this huge successful thing. So they had an argument very quickly, and typically if they dated, that would be something that she would be able to pick up quickly, and it would have been a huge red flag, right? That would make her question whether it was right to marry. Because there's been several instances where, you know, these men have these female best friends, and, you know, the woman is like, what is this? And the man has to, at some point, place a boundary on that female friend. You know, but there was no time and for none of that. I think she had already been married to him by that time. She also said she saw an exchange that he was having with his friend, where he was basically saying that he wanted to sleep with, right, that same friend that he was unwilling to cut off. And of course, that would make her even more insecure. Now, one thing we could talk about here is their attachment styles. We know that Lydia is the individual that is more, I don't know, I think she's more fearfully attached, or should I say anxiously attached, and he's more avoidant. So I feel like every time that she would have a huge emotional blowout when, fear of the end of their marriage came into question in her mind. Instead of comforting her and letting her know, okay, let me fix this, let's communicate, he would further pull away from her. And that is typical of the anxiously attached versus the avoidant type of attachment style. Now, she felt very disrespected, as she should. And one thing that I must note is that what a common theme was that every time they had a disagreement, what Milton would do was he would place the blame back on her and tell her all the things that he had issues with when it pertained to her. That is called redirecting. This is a form of gaslighting, because he never admitted that he was doing what he was doing. It was always, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or redirecting, like, why are you in my phone, why are you, or what about you don't do this, and you wear skimpy bikinis, and you make people think you might be promiscuous, and that's this and this is that, which is absolutely crazy. And it is a very manipulative tactic that certain types of people use, unfortunately, when they feel as if they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Now, she also mentioned there was a handwritten love letter about an ex. I think it was that same ex that he left in a box in the apartment that they shared, which is, to me, is disrespectful, very disrespectful. Because if you have now moved on and married somebody else, why are you still holding on to love letters of exes? You know what I'm saying? It's very disrespectful. And she said it took him a whole year to block this person because she'd feel comfortable enough to be messaging him and calling him at odd hours of the morning or at any time she pleased. It's as if she wasn't aware. I'm referring to the ex-woman or the ex-friend or whoever. It's like she wasn't aware that this person was now in a relationship. And I think oftentimes what happens is that these unserious men that go on these shows will go to the exes and say this was just for TV or it's not serious, making that person feel like the marriage is a joke in a sense. So in a way, I do understand why that person felt emboldened. It's because he never set a clear boundary. Now, she said she felt like she was nagging him, and he again brought up the disrespectful swimwear and so on. And it's really funny because later on she mentions that he did not want her to post her skimpy bikinis on social media. However, he was liking women wearing skimpy bikinis on social media. And also, when she would post, he would not even, sometimes when couples are in love and one person posts, the other partner is in the comment section, number one comment, supporting their partner. He would never do that. And AD mentioned that she noticed that as well. So that was I don't know what that meant. I don't know. I feel like he felt extremely insecure about himself and he projected it onto her. Now, she said that he thinks he wanted marriage, but doesn't think he was ready to be a husband. And that is a whole very interesting conversation, because the assumption is always that if you want marriage, that then you're ready to be a husband. But oftentimes what they want in the marriage, especially when it comes to men, is the benefit that the woman has to offer. But they're not ready to be equally as beneficial to that woman, because oftentimes, especially in the patriarchal society that we do live in, men are never told what they have to do beside provide, but they're never told what they have to do to support their wives. Wives don't only need finances, wives also need emotional support. And throughout this entire interview, it was quite clear that he was just not equipped or able to meet her when it came to providing her emotional needs. And based on the show, you know that Lydia is an extremely emotional individual, and she would need a partner that would be able to hold her hand and guide her through her emotions. But he just wasn't ready to go through that with her. In fact, it annoyed him that she would get so emotional. Something that later he says he appreciated about her, he also hated about her. Now, he said he would scold her in front of the family when she used words that were not necessarily respectful in front of elders. Now, we all know that in the Black community, you can't use any types of words around your parents. But apparently with Lydia, there was this also a cultural difference in their relationship as well. There was an age difference, an emotional difference, a cultural difference. There's a lot of differences between them both. They couldn't be opposite of each other in terms of where they were in their lives, in terms of everything. She said she suffered with depression, anxiety, and she was also feeling some symptoms. So she wasn't feeling very well. She had a lot of fatigue and different things that she was going through. And one time he told her that if she didn't stop crying, because they had an argument about something, and she's probably loud and crying and being I don't wanna say dramatic, but she was doing a lot, and it was, I guess, bothering him. So he was like threatening to call the police on her, which to me was very weird, because who in a relationship decides to call the police because your partner is crying? That is very weird. So another thing was the swimsuit situation occurs again, because every time she confronts him about something, it's thrown back on her about how her swimsuit is inappropriate, and that it would make others feel like she was promiscuous. And again, redirection, deflection was his game. Now, I'm not saying that it was right for her to dress in skimpy bikinis being a married woman, but again, in regular circumstances, this would have been a conversation that would have been had they had time to date prior to getting themselves involved in a marriage. Now, it was also said that he was engaging with, I said that already, other women who were wearing bikini pictures, who were wearing bikinis, which made him quite hypocritical. He wanted to hide his goods, but be able to freely show his interest in other women. So it was very weird. September 16th, 2024, she got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is a very debilitating disease. It's one of these autoimmune diseases that hurt. Chronic pain sufferers are dealing with. So she's already emotionally going through things. She has depression and all these other things. Plus she has to deal with a physical ailment that is like making her tired and probably amplifying her emotionality, which I think he wasn't prepared for. He wasn't ready for it. To be honest with you, looking back at their season, I feel as if he married her because he was interested in what she would be like sexually, to be completely honest with you. I think he was doing what he had to do to see what that thing was like. And he got it, and he got tired of it quickly. Because after the appeal of that goes away, then all of a sudden you have to deal with that person as a human being. You realize you can't handle it, because all that honeymoon stuff has gone out the window. You're all seeing each other for who you really are. You realize you couldn't deal with her emotions. I was also thinking about the aspect of the long distance, because remember that was an issue on the show, but she mentioned that they were only long distance for 3 months. It was not that big of a deal because she would come meet him, he would come and meet her. They moved in together relatively soon after they got married, within 3 months after they got married. So they were not apart for a long time, so that wasn't necessarily their issue. She says he was amazing in the beginning, but since she asked for a divorce, because AD asked her, like, what is the relationship with you and him now? And she said since she asked for the divorce, they stopped talking. And prior to that, she received several messages from women, because I'm pretty sure a lot of women watch Love is Blind and a lot of people know Lydia. So a lot of these women were experiencing encounters with him and being baffled as to why is he like talking to me. I thought he was married, but they didn't see any ring on his finger. So he would go out a lot with no ring on his finger, like he was a single person, essentially. And she was getting all this from all these women, and people have been saying that actually Milton has been doing this for quite some time, because there was a whole thread on Reddit about all his extramarital activities. So it's not something new that's been happening, it's something he's been doing. Now, what I notice is that people, because of how they perceived Lydia on the show, I don't like how they were ready to dismiss her. I don't like that, because it sets a horrible precedent that women have to be perfect for them to be believed. I think that is dangerous, because nobody is perfect. Everybody makes mistakes, and everybody has certain quirks about themselves that make them either difficult to deal with, or a person that is, just human. Everybody has their quirks. So to not believe somebody simply because you thought that their personality was too high strung on the show is crazy to me. It's dangerous, and it's scary that women feel that way. But let's go more into things. Now, she said that the last straw for her was that she got a message on March 31st. And that person telling her the same thing. She said she got messages from 5 different women telling her very similar things, and that was the last straw. So then she also goes into talking about the dynamic with her and his parents. And remember, her parents are not in America with her. Her mother is in Puerto Rico. She heavily relied on his family to give her that familial support that she did not have. So they became very close. They actually lived with his parents for like 8 months because they were saving for a house. 2 weeks prior, she left the house. Either 2 weeks or 2 months prior, she left the house to, I guess, work on herself because it wasn't going well with the relationship. She was asked if he was blindsided by the divorce, and she said no, because she had left the house for 2 weeks. He would call her stupid and all types of things. In the end, she doesn't think he ever loved her. And that is very unfortunate. He loved to curse, but didn't like her cursing, especially in front of his family. And it turns out he was very misogynistic, because he told her that he wanted her to be more feminine, which is code for he wanted her to shut up and accept his mistreatment. That's what that meant. So in my mind, I'm thinking, this guy and his friends were really influenced. I feel like his friends had a heavy influence on him throughout this marriage. I think they were advising him with a lot of the moves he kept making. And I feel like that didn't do well for his marriage. And that just proves again that he wasn't ready to be married. One time he told her that she was 5 minutes away from being thrown out in the streets, right? He hated, again, I'm repeating that, he hated but he loved that she was so emotionally sensitive. Because remember, the family that Milton came from was very military. They did not show a lot of affection. So he grew up in an unaffectionate household. So what he loved about Lydia was that he was going to be able to get that affection that he did not get in his family. But it turned out that he loved it, but he also hated it. Because when it was for being there for him, I'm pretty sure he loved that. But when it came to them fighting and her reacting emotionally to their fights, it's like he couldn't handle it because he wasn't raised in an emotional household. She spoke with his father, and she was, as I said, was close to his family and would tell the father what was going on in their relationship, which Milton hated. Because Milton didn't want anybody to know his business, not even the public, hence why he wanted her to sign an NDA. So I'm pretty sure he didn't want his parents in his business either. So that pissed him off, her overly sharing about their relationship. But I feel like she didn't have anyone, so in a way I understand why she did that. Not that I'm justifying it, because I don't necessarily think it's appropriate to share your marital issues with your family or the person's family, but I understand why she did it, because I feel like she was caught between a rock and a hard place. She had nobody else to turn to. The fans despised her. She didn't have a lot of friends on the show. She spoke about one friend that she had, and she didn't have many people. She didn't have much family. So I think she clung to his family, and that didn't end up working out well for their relationship. But I understand why she had to do it. She's anxious. Every time she tries to get close to him, every time she shows anxiety, he rejects it. So she said, according to the father, she didn't do anything wrong. But then again, the dad is not necessarily a great judge of who was wrong or who was right in the relationship, because he's on the outside and he's probably only hearing Lydia's side. Not that I think Lydia was lying, but he was only hearing one side of the story. And one can say, well, he knows his son, which would probably be true. But the way Milton is so quiet and secretive, a lot of parents think they know their children, but they don't. He seems to be like a child that the parent could only guess how he is in a relationship, but would really not know, because he wasn't close to his family, neither did he share much with them. Now, when Eddie asked, like, what is your part in the demise of this relationship, she basically said she stayed in a toxic situation for too long. She was accepting a lot of wrong from him, and it's because of her trauma. She was just accepting it, hoping that he would be the kind of guy he was in the beginning of the relationship. The kind of guy who, when Lydia would call him and say she couldn't be alone or whatever the case may be, he would message his mom and tell his mom, go to Lydia, be there with Lydia. That's the type of guy she thought he was. But it turns out that wasn't the type of guy he actually was, because the way you actually are stands the test of time. You being you stands the test of time. There's nothing more unsustainable than you not being yourself, which is why dating is so important, because eventually you get to see that person for themselves. Now, in terms of what I think Lydia did wrong, in addition to her ignoring certain red flags, I think what she did wrong was her being unable to manage her emotions. I think that was one of her biggest issues. Now, you could argue that he saw how Lydia was prior to marrying her. He definitely did. One thing Lydia never did was change herself for Milton. How she was how she was, and he saw how she was, and the assumption was that he accepted her for how she was. And she even states in her post on Instagram that one of the things she liked about him was that he accepted her for who she was. But then the more I listened to the interview that Lydia did on the show, is the more I realized that he did not accept her for who she was. So it's a conflicting thing, because although she says that, the very thing that was her, which was her emotions being on her shoulders, that is Lydia in a nutshell. He was saying that he hated that about her based on his actions. He rejected that completely. But then he loved that about her. So it's like, I don't know. It's weird. Like, it's very, very weird. So what I will say, by looking at both of these couples, mainly Lydia and Milton and Ashley and Lila, is perhaps listen to the audience more, because we know what we're saying. I know it's easy for these couples to be like, these people don't know you, they don't know what's gonna happen with us, they don't know anything. In the case of both of these couples, the audience have been 100% correct in everything they've said. The receipts with Tyler, us warning Ashley, telling Ashley this man is lying to you, and her choosing to double down and stay with him. It's like, the more we criticize their relationship, the more it makes them want to make their relationship work. And I hope they realize that that is not gonna ever help them. In fact, it hurts them more, because the audience has nothing to lose if their relationship fails or if it thrives. Like, we lose nothing, we gain nothing. I think that people genuinely see red flags, and they genuinely try to, tell that to the couples, and of course they wouldn't listen because we're strangers after all, but they definitely end up feeling in the end. Anyways, you guys, let me know what you feel or you think about listening to Lydia's interview on AD's podcast, and come back here and comment, and we could have a conversation. See you guys, like, subscribe, and see you next time. Bye bye.